The security guard at the Ritz-Carlton was polite. I want to give him that. He was a young man in a dark uniform who had clearly been briefed on the situation, because when I told him my name, he did not need to check his list. He simply said, "Mr. Caldwell, I am very sorry, but we have been instructed not to admit you this evening." I looked at him for a moment. Then I looked at the invitation in my hand, the one that had arrived 6 weeks earlier, addressed to me in Emma's handwriting, with my name embossed on the inner envelope, the way formal invitations have always been done. The invitation to the wedding of Emma Grace Caldwell and James Robert Hartley. My granddaughter's name, my family's name, in my hand, at a door that was closed to me. Inside, through the glass and the marble and the heavy doors, I could hear the string quartet beginning the Pachelbel canon. Emma had talked about that piece since she was 14 years old. I had sat beside her at my piano when she was 6 and played the melody with 2 fingers while she listened and learned what the notes meant. She had called me 2 months ago, laughing, to tell me she had finally decided it would be the canon. I stepped back from the entrance. I found a bench on the sidewalk, perhaps 30 feet from the door, and I sat down in my best suit, with Diane's anniversary cufflinks on my wrists and Emma's wedding invitation in my hands. I listened to the canon play faintly through the glass and the 30 feet of distance my daughter-in-law had decided should exist between me and my granddaughter on the most important day of her life. My phone held a voicemail from Derek, left 6 days earlier. He had said, "Dad, Monica she needs this day to go a certain way, and she's worried that, I know this is hard. I'm sorry. Please just try to understand." I had not called him back. I had been a cardiac surgeon for 41 years. I had sat in consultation rooms and delivered diagnoses that changed the direction of people's entire lives. I had held things that were broken and tried to make them whole. I had learned in 4 decades of that work that there are moments when the only honest thing you can do is sit quietly with what is in front of you and wait for the next thing to be clear. I sat, I listened to the canon, I waited. At 6:47 in the evening, my phone rang. It was Emma. The ceremony had ended 47 minutes earlier. Emma was, at that precise moment, supposed to be making her entrance into the grand ballroom on the arm of her new husband James, to the sound of the string quartet playing the song she had chosen since she was 14 years old. Instead, she was calling her grandfather from a corridor outside the ballroom, in her wedding dress, with the reception beginning without her. Before I tell you what she said and what happened inside the Ritz-Carlton in the hour that followed, I need to tell you how I came to be sitting on that bench. Because Monica did not simply bar me from a wedding. She made a series of decisions over 6 months that compounded into something considerably more serious than a guest list modification. And what I had put in motion in the 48 hours before that Saturday evening did not end with the reception. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and if you have ever been shut out of a moment you had every right to be part of. If someone has ever tried to remove you from a story you helped write. Like this video and subscribe to Calm Dad Stories before we go any further, because Emma was on the other end of that phone call, and she did not know I was sitting outside. My name is Edward Caldwell. I am 73 years old. I spent 41 years as a cardiac surgeon. I do not say that for credential. I say it because a cardiac surgeon has a particular relationship with what keeps a heart functioning, what damages it, and what it takes to repair it when something has gone wrong. In 41 years, I held approximately 12,000 hearts in my hands, not metaphorically, in my hands. Some I could save, some I could not. The ones I could not save stay with me in a way I do not speak about often, but they are there. I tell you this because this is a story about my granddaughter Emma, and because loving someone the way I love Emma is something I understand with the same precision that I understand the muscle that keeps a person alive. I know what love looks like when it is functioning. I know what it looks like when it is being damaged from the outside. Diane and I had one child, Derek. Derek married Monica 11 years ago. They have one daughter, Emma,
who is now 24 years old, and who, on the Saturday I sat on that bench, married a good and honest young man named James. Diane died 18 months before the wedding. Breast cancer, diagnosed the previous spring, 11 months from diagnosis to the morning she left. We had been married for 47 years. She was at Emma's engagement party 4 months before she left. I have a photograph from that evening. Diane and Emma at the dinner table, laughing at something James had said, and Diane's hand resting on Emma's hand, and the expression on Diane's face that I have spent a lifetime understanding. Not happiness exactly, something deeper than happiness. The recognition of continuity, the understanding that something you love is going to continue after you. Emma knew, as I knew, that the wedding would be the first major family occasion without Diane in the room. We had talked about it twice. Emma had cried. I had not, which is a failure of mine and not a virtue. What I had promised her, clearly, without condition, was that I would be there. That promise was the thing Monica decided to erase. I want to be precise about Monica before I go further, because precision matters to me, and because I do not want to characterize her inaccurately. She is an intelligent woman. She is organized. She is strategic in the way that people who have always thought carefully about positioning themselves are strategic. These are not inherently bad qualities. What they become depends entirely on the direction in which they are pointed. The direction she pointed them in the 6 months before Emma's wedding was towards me. 3 months after Diane's funeral, I revised my estate documents with Victor Lang, my attorney of 22 years. Among other adjustments, I established a direct trust for Emma, transferring on my death the beach house in Maine and a substantial cash position directly into her name. I mentioned this to Derek over a quiet dinner in September. Derek told Monica. I also decided separately to give Emma a wedding gift of $500,000 in cash, drawn from the investment accounts Diane and I had built together over 47 years, a start for her life with James. Diane and I had discussed it before she died. It was what we both wanted. I mentioned this to Derek at Christmas dinner. Monica was at the table. I noticed in the days after Christmas a change in the way Monica spoke to me, a certain quality of attentiveness that sharpened into something more closely resembling surveillance. She asked me twice about the estate documents. She asked once whether I had really thought through the implications of a large cash transfer to Emma before marriage. She asked these things in the register of concern, which is the register that is most difficult to push back against directly. 4 days after Christmas, Monica called the Ritz-Carlton's event coordinator and had my name removed from the wedding guest list. I did not know this for 5 months. I did not know it because Emma did not know. Monica had told Emma twice over the winter that I had called to say I was too tired to make the long trip and that I hoped she would understand. I had made no such calls. I sent Emma 2 letters over the same period. I left her 1 voicemail in February. Monica told Emma that the voicemail had been rambling and difficult to follow. He really didn't sound like himself. Emma, who loves me, who had just lost her grandmother, who did not want to add to anyone's difficulty, had spent 5 months grieving what she believed was her grandfather's declining health. She had grieved quietly and tried to accept it. She had accepted a lie for 5 months.
I called Victor Lang the morning after Derek's voicemail. I called not because I was certain anything criminal had occurred, but because I am a man trained to make decisions based on evidence rather than assumption. I needed to understand what I was actually looking at. Robert Sanchez I had retained once before, 7 years ago, for a matter involving a hospital administrator and certain missing charitable funds. He was methodical, he was fast, and he did not mistake his role for anyone's therapist. He arrived at Victor's office on a Tuesday morning, and we were through by Thursday afternoon. The first thing Robert found was the event coordinator at the Ritz-Carlton. After Victor established, through documentation of my $60,000 contribution to the wedding costs, transferred in November at Derek and Monica's request, my status as a partial financial contributor to the event, the coordinator was willing to confirm the guest list history. Monica's name was on the modification authorization. My name had been removed on December 29th, 3 days after Christmas dinner. The second thing was the letters. Emma and James's building logs all incoming correspondence through the doorman service. Robert obtained, through appropriate legal channels, the building's mail intake records for January through April. 2 pieces of mail from my return address had been signed for and collected during that period, not by Emma, by Monica, who had retained a key to the apartment from when she had helped them move in the previous autumn. Monica had removed my letters to my granddaughter from her daughter's mailroom before Emma saw them. Both letters were recovered subsequently, still sealed, from a drawer in Monica's home office. Emma found them herself. The third discovery required Victor to subpoena bank records. I had contributed $60,000 to the wedding fund. Derek had contributed $40,000 from his own accounts. The Ritz-Carlton contract totaled $135,000. Monica was the primary account signatory. Between January and April, across 6 separate transactions described in the records as vendor adjustments, $38,000 had been transferred from the event account to a joint personal account held by Derek and Monica. There were no vendor adjustments. There was $38,000, my money and Derek's money, redirected to Monica's personal use in the same months she was keeping me from my granddaughter's wedding. Robert also found, in a separate line of inquiry, that Monica had contacted a financial consultant in February to discuss what she described as anticipated estate management responsibilities, referring to my estate, and had provided that consultant with figures from my investment portfolio that she could only have obtained from the documents Derek had access to through our shared financial accounts. She had been positioning herself for authority over my estate while simultaneously keeping me from my granddaughter's wedding and redirecting funds from the account I had contributed to. I sat in Victor's kitchen with the report on Thursday evening, 4 days before the wedding. Victor was across from me. His expression was the careful, neutral expression of a man who has processed a great deal of evidence in his career and has stopped being surprised by what it reveals. I thought about Diane. I thought about the photograph from the engagement party, Emma's hand and Diane's hand, the expression on Diane's face that I know precisely what it means. I made 2 decisions. The first, I was going to be at Emma's wedding. The second, I would let Emma decide how. A cardiac surgeon does not operate on emotion. This is not a lack of feeling. I want to be clear about that. There is no moment in medicine more charged with what matters than the moment you enter a chest cavity and hold what is keeping a person alive. What surgery requires is not the absence of feeling, but the discipline to act from information rather than from the feeling. The two can coexist. They must. I had all the information I needed. What I felt about Monica's choices, I set aside in the way I have set things aside in operating rooms for 41 years. Not suppressed, not denied, but placed to one side where it would not compromise my precision. I told Victor to prepare the documentation that would accompany me to the Ritz-Carlton on Saturday. I told Robert his work was complete. I thanked them both. Then I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had taught Emma to make Diane's biscuit recipe when she was 8 years old, where she had sat on the counter and watched my hands and asked me to teach her more slowly, and I called my granddaughter directly. Emma answered on the second ring. It was Friday morning, 1 day before her wedding. I said, "Emma, it's Grandpa. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it from me directly." She started crying before I finished the sentence. She said, "Grandpa, Mom said you were too tired. She said you called. I thought you weren't." I never called. I sent 2 letters. I have never once stopped wanting to be there, not for 1 day of the past 6 months. The silence that followed is one I know from 41 years of medicine, the silence of someone integrating information that reorganizes what they believed about something that mattered to them enormously. It is not a comfortable silence. It is a necessary one. I did not fill it. I let her have it. After a while, she said quietly, "She told me you said you were too tired." "I know," I said. "I know she did." Another silence. Then, "The letters, what did they say?"
I had kept copies, as I keep copies of everything important. I read her the opening of the January letter. It began, "Emma, I have been thinking about your grandmother every day. She would have wanted me to write this down, so I'm writing it down." Emma did not speak for a moment. Then she said, "I'll call you back." She called back 53 minutes later. Her voice was steady in a way that reminded me of Diane, the way Diane sounded when she had made up her mind about something and there was nothing left to discuss. She said, "I want you there, Grandpa, tomorrow. I don't care what anyone says. James wants you there too. Can you come?" I told her I would be there. What I did not tell her was that I had already asked Victor to accompany me. I arrived at the Ritz-Carlton at 5:45 on Saturday evening, 15 minutes before the reception was scheduled to begin. Victor Lang was beside me. He carried a folder containing 3 documents: the transfer record confirming my $60,000 contribution to the Whitting Fund, a signed letter from Emma dated that morning confirming that she had personally invited me to attend her reception, and a summary of the guest list modification with Monica's authorization date and signature, prepared by Robert from the event coordinator's records. The same young security guard was at the entrance. He recognized me. His composure was professional, but his discomfort was visible, and I respected him for not trying to hide it. Victor Lang presented the folder to the duty manager, a woman named Ms. Pearson, who had been managing large events at this property for over a decade, and who understood within 30 seconds of reading the documentation that the situation she had been briefed on was not the situation she was actually facing. Monica appeared from inside the lobby at almost exactly that moment. She came through the main doors with the composure of someone who believes the conversation they're walking into is one they are going to win. She was dressed for the reception, and she looked, as Monica always looks in important rooms, precisely correct. She said, "Edward, I think you need to leave. We've been through this."
I looked at her for a moment. After 41 years in operating rooms, I have become familiar with a particular kind of surface composure, the kind that is working very hard to appear effortless. It has a specific quality, a tension underneath the stillness, like a cardiac rhythm that looks normal on the monitor but reads differently if you know what you are listening for. I said, "Miss Pearson, could you help us resolve this?" Miss Pearson had finished reading. She looked up at Monica with the precise, measured expression of a luxury hotel manager who has navigated complicated family dynamics in her ballrooms many times and who understands that her obligation is to the event, not to any individual agenda. She said, "Mrs. Caldwell, we've confirmed that Mr. Caldwell is a significant financial contributor to this event and has received a personal invitation from the bride herself. I'm afraid we're not in a position to prevent his entry." Monica said, "This is my daughter's wedding." Miss Pearson said, "Yes, and Mr. Caldwell is the bride's grandfather, and the bride has confirmed she wants him here. If you'd like to speak with our events director, I'm happy to arrange that. Otherwise, I think we should allow the reception to begin." There was a pause of perhaps 4 or 5 seconds, long enough for Monica to calculate what she was holding and what it was worth. She turned and walked back into the lobby without another word. Victor stayed at the entrance to complete the paperwork. I walked through the doors of the Ritz-Carlton and across the marble lobby, past the flower arrangements that must have cost $15,000 at minimum, and the waitstaff moving with the practiced efficiency of a place that has hosted 10,000 occasions exactly like this one, and into the corridor outside the grand ballroom. Emma was standing in the corridor in her wedding dress. She had not gone in yet. She and James were waiting, and when she saw me come through the lobby doors, she walked toward me without hesitating, and I walked toward her, and she put her arms around me in the middle of the corridor of the Ritz-Carlton and held on. I held her. Over her shoulder, through the doors of the grand ballroom, I could see the tables and the flowers and the guests and the string quartet that had started playing again. I could see the chair that had been empty, that would have stayed empty, at the table nearest the dance floor, the one that had my name card on it, because Emma had put it there despite everything, because she had never fully stopped hoping. James shook my hand and said, "We're glad you're here, sir." I told him he was going to make her very happy. We went in together. I danced with Emma twice that evening, the first time early in the reception when the dance floor opened and she came directly to me before she went to anyone else. The second time near the end to a slow song I did not recognize and did not need to. Monica did not speak to me at any point during the evening. She sat at the family table and she watched the room with the expression of someone recalibrating in real time, and I did not look at her directly more than once. Derek found me near the end of the night by the bar where I was finishing my second glass of the wine Emma had selected. He shook my hand. He said he was sorry. He said he had not known the full extent of what Monica had done, the letters, the phone calls she had fabricated, the guest list. He said he had known she had concerns, but had not asked the questions he should have asked. I looked at my son for a moment. He is 50 years old. He has always been a good-hearted man who found it easier to let someone else navigate difficult rooms. This is not a fatal flaw, but it is a consequential one when the person doing the navigating has goals of their own. I said, "The questions you didn't ask had answers, Derek. The answers didn't change because you didn't ask." He nodded. He said he understood. I told him to call me when he was ready to talk properly. He said he would. I left the reception at 11:15 after Emma hugged me goodbye in the lobby and held on for longer than goodbyes usually last. James stood beside her with his hand on her shoulder, and I thought, she has chosen well, and Diane would have loved him. The legal consequences unfolded in the 4 months after the wedding, as legal consequences tend to, methodically, in documents, without drama. Victor filed the civil claims for the $38,000 in fraudulent transfers from the wedding fund. The case was straightforward. Bank records, transaction dates, Monica's signature on the authorizations, and the Ritz-Carlton's accounting showing no vendor adjustments corresponding to any of those dates. The matter settled out of court for full restitution plus costs. The intercepted mail carried its own legal weight. Federal statute is specific about interference with delivered correspondence, and Monica's signature on the building's intake log for those 2 dates was something that did not require extensive interpretation. The financial consultant Monica had contacted regarding estate management responsibilities was interviewed by Victor's office as part of a separate protective filing. The consultant, who had not understood the full picture of what he was being approached for, was cooperative. Monica's access to my portfolio information through Derek's accounts was addressed in a restructured documentation arrangement. The wedding gift, $500,000, was transferred to Emma's account the Monday after the reception, in her name, as Diane and I had always intended. The beach house in Maine remains in the estate trust exactly as I wrote it. Derek and Monica did not separate, which is their choice and not mine to make. Derek has called me once a month since the wedding. The calls are careful and not long, but they are consistent, and consistency is where I look for what a person actually intends. He is working towards something. I am patient. Emma and James came to visit in April. She brought the wedding photographs. There is one, caught by the photographer without staging during the second dance, of Emma with her head back laughing at something I had just said, and my hand on her hand, and both of us in the middle of the grand ballroom floor of the Ritz-Carlton where I was not supposed to be.
It sits on my desk beside Diane's photograph from the engagement party. In 41 years of cardiac surgery, I learned something that surprised people when I said it out loud. The heart is not a fragile organ. People think of it that way, something delicate, something that breaks. The language we use suggests this, a broken heart, a heartbreak, as though the thing itself were made of something that shatters. But the heart is a muscle, and muscles, when they are given the conditions to heal, are extraordinarily resilient. The heart can be stopped, repaired, and restarted. It can be operated on while a person is still alive. It can sustain damage that appears catastrophic and continue with the right intervention to beat with remarkable endurance. What damages a heart permanently is not a single event. It is sustained deprivation, the gradual, systematic removal of what the muscle needs to keep functioning, the quiet, consistent blocking of what it requires. Monica had spent 6 months doing exactly this, not with a dramatic gesture, with small, careful, quiet removals, a name from a guest list, 2 letters from a mailbox, a phone call that never happened but was reported as if it had, sustained and methodical, the way all serious damage is. Emma called me from the corridor of the Ritz-Carlton in her wedding dress. I was on the dance floor twice. The heart is not fragile. It does not break easily, and it does not stay broken. It is, when you understand what it actually is, rather than the metaphor of it, one of the most enduring things in the human body. Diane held mine for 47 years. She understood it in the way that only one person ever fully understood it. She would have danced at that wedding, badly and happily, and without caring who was watching, the way she always danced when something made her genuinely happy. I danced for both of us. I am still here.